The NFL season is just about over with Super Bowl 55 on the wake on Sunday between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs. After that, it's going to be mock season, folks, and you guys can utilize the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator courtesy ProFootballNetwork.com. You can engage in user trades. You're going to receive trades from the computer as well, and it is all free. Premium features free. ProFootballNetwork.com. To be able to talk about his latest mock draft that he released at ProFootballNetwork.com, I'm talking right now with Dalton Miller, NFL draft analyst here at Pro Football Network. And Dalton, man, very excited to have you here, man. Let's waste no time. You put together a 2-round mock for PFN, and there were some surprising trades and not so surprising picks altogether based on the current climate of some teams around the National Football League. Thank you for joining me here today, man. But let's kick things off here. Pick number 1, the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. Please tell me that this is going to be the pick everybody expects.
Yeah, it's too easy. I mean, when you're writing a mock draft or when you are looking at a mock draft, if you see the number 1 pick be anybody other than Trevor Lawrence, quarterback from Clemson, you can X out of that mock draft. It's not going to be realistic. There is no way he will not be the first pick unless something absolutely catastrophic happens.
And that's the thing, too, about Jacksonville is, Urban Meyer coming into the equation. Everybody's wondering, are they going to go with Trevor Lawrence? Or are they going to go with Justin Fields? Obviously, with the Ohio State ties there all together. But obviously, the Jaguars, they take Trevor Lawrence. And for him, he's going to throw, I believe, here early before the pro day, the Clemson pro day, so he can have a little bit of a shoulder issue that was discovered, repaired just in time for him to be able to be ready for the entire stretch of what's coming ahead here. But now let's focus on to pick number 2 in your mock draft. There was a trade. What are the details?
Yeah, so with that trade, I'm going to get my computer up so I can look at the picture because I have them all saved already here.
Perfect.
It has to come up. You got to give it time to get. It was pick 8, pick 39, pick 107, next year's 1 and 2 for Carolina. And they're moving up from 8 to 2 to draft Justin Fields from Ohio State. It turned out he ended up being their guy, and it's because Joe Brady and Matt Rule they wanted to open up the offense completely. I think that Joe Brady is one of the more, I guess the way to say it would be Morpheus. He's able to do whatever his quarterback is able to do. He's able to mold that offense towards him. And I think opening up the offense with a quarterback that can legitimately run the ball 8 to 12 times a game just opens up that offense so much more.
Well, and so for Carolina, too, obviously they have Teddy Bridgewater, but Matt Rule, I mean, he's always looking at ways to improve. How can the offense be even better? And a player like Justin Fields, I think that would be an exciting prospect down there in Carolina with Christian McCaffrey and obviously Mike Davis there. But now let's transition to pick number 3 in the NFL draft. Obviously, there is another trade. I mean, this was one where we saw trades coming left and right. And Dalton, real quick before we get into that pick, what was your thought process behind some of these trades and orchestrating it all together for some of these teams, especially the Carolina trade? What intrigued you to have them move up from where they were at to number 2?
Well, I just think when you have a guy that you like over the rest, I mean, obviously if you guys have all, Zach Wilson and Justin Fields tags touching, you just wait for one of them to go, and then you go up and get that other guy. But if you really want a guy, in this draft class, you have to go up and get them as your quarterback. You cannot allow yourself to miss out on that. And you are going to be willing to give up a lot of assets to move up and do that. So that was kind of my thought process there.
So the Miami Dolphins originally had the 3rd overall pick in this year's NFL draft, but in your mock, the Los Angeles Chargers, they orchestrated a little bit of a trade to get up and to select an offensive lineman. Explain Penei Sewell here to the LA Chargers at pick number 3.
I think the most important thing you can do for your young, rookie, or in this case, second-year quarterback with Justin Herbert, is have him be comfortable in the pocket. I don't think there's any better way to do that outside of getting some, trade in of a veteran that's a great left tackle, then getting him back with his college teammate Penei Sewell. Only 1 sack of Justin Herbert in his career, starting at left tackle there. Somebody that Justin can be really comfortable with.
So now getting up to the 4th pick, obviously the Atlanta Falcons hold that pick all together right here in your mock draft. But the one thing I wanted to highlight is the Matt Ryan era. I mean, obviously he's getting up there in age, but there are some changes that are coming down the pike here for Atlanta. And you have them selecting Zach Wilson obviously out of BYU, and he's one of the impressive quarterbacks that has some of the arm talent, the athletic ability. What goes into your pick here for Atlanta for Zach Wilson?
Yeah, so different regime now, new regime in Atlanta, and Matt Ryan, they cannot get out of his contract right away. He's going to be, I believe, $49 million of dead cap where they to cut him this year. And so he will be the starter in 2021. I think allowing Zach Wilson the year, whether he's doing scout team stuff or whatever he is doing, to progress mentally is where he needs to be. So, it's getting out of a simpler offense at BYU, a lot of heavy personnel, shot plays off of play action, getting out of the pocket and making plays off script, getting on script and being able to work within the confines of the offense in Atlanta while, he doesn't have to play right away, I think is going to be really important.
Cincinnati Bengals, they are on the clock now, and out of a lot of surprise, and I'm sure you're going to be ready to talk with a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans about this, that they were hoping for offensive line. Obviously, Penei Sewell being off the clock here, off the board overall, going to the Chargers, I think it kind of impacts Cincinnati in a sense here. So you have them taking Jamar Chase, obviously very talented wide receiver out of LSU, sat out of the 2020 college football season, and a lot of people were wondering if that's going to impact his draft stock, but we saw him on one of the most elite offenses in college football history. Now he's reuniting with his good friend Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought process with this. He's actually my personal wide receiver 3 in this draft class right now. And for me, he is more specific to a quarterback or a situation than the other guys. So for me, it was really getting him with a quarterback that is going to be willing to sling the ball into tight windows, because as of right now, Jamar Chase is not somebody with the separation quickness or the nuance as a route runner to really go out there and get wide open quite a bit. So it's going to be leveraging passes away from, draping men in man coverage. And I think that fit with Joe Burrow is absolutely perfect, because that is exactly what they did at LSU. And
now we're on, go ahead.
And the reason I didn't go offensive tackle here, I'm a little bit lower on Rashawn Slater than I think, the NFL and media are. And it's just such a great offensive tackle class. I think that they can still get a starter in round 2 where they're at.
Well, and I also think, too, with free agency as well, there are some potential targets they could, go out there and try to solidify, maybe some veteran help. I don't know if you necessarily want to bring in a young guy to help protect one of your young quarterbacks unless he's really that blue chip type talent like we saw with Tristan Wirfs. And obviously, I think that's an outlier when you talk about this year's tackle class in comparison. There were some great prospects altogether. Obviously, Penei Sewell didn't even play in 2020 as well, so you have to wonder about that missed experience. Obviously, you're trying to protect your value in the NFL draft, but transition out of the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a team, man, with Carson Wentz, the whole talk about him and Jalen Hurts, obviously a new head coach. One of the things that I think stood out, and I think you nailed it here, they need some wide receiver help. They need some guys that can create separation. Now, they went and they got Jalen Reagor last year. However, he dealt with injuries, and he also just wasn't that key guy that could get separation downfield. He's the speed guy, but they need somebody that has the talent to create separation as a route runner. When we look at Jalen Reagor, he's got the vertical speed to be able to do it, but I think that this is a complete player here with Devontae Smith going to Philadelphia. Obviously, kind of explain your thought process here as to selecting Smith. A lot of people have projected that maybe Smith goes to the Dolphins at 3, but obviously in this draft scenario, the Dolphins, they gave up pick number 3 to be able to allow the Chargers to move up here, which frees up Smith to be available for the Eagles here at 6.
Yeah, and Smith to the Dolphins would be a fantastic pick, getting him back with Tua and getting somebody that, like you said, can create that separation. It's what the Philadelphia Eagles need more than anything. They just don't have that guy right now, and that really hurt Carson Wentz. And I think, for Jalen Hurts, it's huge because they were also teammates at Alabama. They can figure this out together, if they end up starting Jalen Hurts. Now, it's tough because they really, in my opinion, need a quarterback. I'm not the biggest Jalen Hurts fan, but I think you have him. He brings a different element to the offense. And so I think this year, I don't think it hurts you to go with him as your starting quarterback.
And certainly not as well. You need that type of, for a young quarterback, you need to be able to get him some weapons. And I felt like with, the injuries that Deshaun Jackson had last year, Alshon Jeffrey, there were times where Alshon Jeffrey just didn't put it out on the line last year for the Eagles. That was one thing I felt like why Carson Wentz tried to do so much for them. So whether he's an Eagle in 2021 or whether it's Jalen Hurts actually being the guy long-term, that's going to be something we're going to see, but you have to surround him with weapons. Now, the Detroit Lions, obviously a new head coach in Dan Campbell, new, obviously a GM in Brad Holmes, and a new quarterback in Jared Goff. You go out and you get them another prolific playmaker at the wide receiver position here. You have Jalen Waddle out of Alabama, which is wide receiver U going to Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, 4 out of my last, top 5 wide receivers in the draft, from 2020 and 2021 are Alabama wide receivers. It is wide receiver U. And the thing with Jalen Waddle, he will never fall past down from 7 for me in mock drafts this year, because he's just such a good fit in Detroit, especially now that they have Jared Goff, because he is another guy who downfield, vertical separation and being able to get open going across the field with pure speed. But he's not just a speed guy. He's also somebody with outstanding change of direction. He does really remind me of a mixture between Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy, with Henry Ruggs' long speed and Jerry Jeudy's ability to stop, start, and cut laterally. He needs to become a little bit more nuanced as a route runner to create separation consistently on routes where he's not breaking, at 90 or past 90, because when he does that, when he's running things like blaze outs, post corners, those double moves, there's nobody that can guard Jalen Waddle. He is the most dangerous person in this draft.
Well, I was a little surprised, too, that he came back so quickly from the injury he sustained this season to play in the national championship game. And you could just tell, I mean, you had a lot of NFL players concerned about his overall well-being. Like, hey, we know how good you are, my man. You don't have to prove anything. Don't go out there and hurt yourself even further. I mean, it's a big gamble. It really, really is. And he's probably going to be a round 1 talent that we see here. And obviously, according to your mock draft, bam, he is. But let's get to pick number 8. There was another trade. And this is where the Carolina Panthers previously held the spot, but now the New York Jets move it to 8, and they take Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern at the offensive tackle position. Especially, a lot of questions. Is it going to be, obviously, you have Mekhi Becton at left tackle, but now you need a true right tackle. Is this the pick that's going to help Sam Darnold stay upright in New York?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Rashawn Slater, especially when it comes to the right tackle spot, because a lot of the times you see, your left tackle is your right defensive end that you're defending against is usually your more speed rush type guy. And I think that's really the only issue that Rashawn Slater showed on tape. He was fantastic against Chase Young in the reps that he had against him. He was great against AJ Epinesa in the Iowa game, dealing with that length. And that's something that the NFL has brought up with Slater having a little bit shorter arms. I don't think that it hurts him. The only time I saw him get hurt was against Zach Bond in the Wisconsin game, and that was with speed on the outside. Obviously, right-handed quarterback Sam Darnold, he'll be able to account for that speed on the outside, step up in the pocket, get away from that first rusher. And so I think the right tackle spot for the New York Jets is a fantastic fit for Slater.
And Northwestern was a surprise, Usher. I mean, they put together some strong performances, but the run that they were able to have, and they competed really well with Ohio State. They were neck and neck there for a moment. And that was obviously very fun to see there. But now we go to pick number 9. And the Denver Broncos, they're on the clock. And me, Dalton, I cover the Denver Broncos. And there is some merit in your pick here. I think this is the discussion. Who the Broncos really go with? Do they go with Patrick Surtain, or do they go with Caleb Farley? You have them taking Caleb Farley. And I think that the reasons you listed, I think they're very valid. They present a very valid case. You mentioned his click and close ability, his ball skills as a defensive back, his athleticism. But you also mentioned the concerns that over the injury history that he has, and also not playing last year, how that could have impacted him altogether, because he was projected to be potentially one of the top defensive players in this year's class, and he could have built on that even further. But now, obviously, with not playing, there's some question marks. And obviously, Vic Fangio's defense. So explain your pick here a little bit more outside of what I touched on.
Yeah, so the injury stuff is the big thing for me. And on top of that, not the standardized testing of the NFL Combine. You don't have that this year. He was going to test very, very well. He will at his pro day, but it's just not the same as doing it at the NFL Combine. Also, with the medicals, they are still going to do that. They're going to do that privately. That's part of the virtual combine that they are doing. But not being able to get in and talk to this guy, he didn't play this past year, and he was coming off an injury that he played with in 2019 with a back injury, and so you haven't seen him be fully healthy and play a full season. He opted out this year, obviously, and just all of those question marks make his draft stock specifically really difficult to pin down. But in my opinion, he's the best cornerback in this draft class.
And it's going to be exciting to see how he kind of, evolves. Obviously, pro days are coming up here in the next month. But now let's transition to the 10th pick in the NFL draft, previously held by the Dallas Cowboys. You have the San Francisco 49ers making a trade. And I tell you what, if this year's NFL draft has this many trades, I think it's going to be very exciting, Dalton. So I think you touched on the excitement piece here. But San Francisco moving up to 10 to take a quarterback. Trey Lance is coming into San Francisco.
Yeah, they needed to move up here. There was another team in New England that was also looking to move up. And so the 49ers called the Dallas Cowboys. They're like, hey, we could give you a little bit better offer. The Dallas Cowboys kind of wanted to move down further than 12, but they really couldn't find a good buyer that they wanted. New England wasn't giving up enough. And so they get their quarterback of the future. They're going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo around for another year as long as that relationship between he and Kyle Shanahan is not to the point where they cannot reconcile their differences. Trey Lance is a guy he needs a year to sit out and just learn. He's a one-year guy at North Dakota State, but he's got all the physical tools in the world. He might have the best combination of size, speed, and arm talent from the quarterback position this year. And that's even over top of guys like at the top with Trevor Lawrence, who is a great athlete, great runner, fantastic arm, and Justin Fields, who is a great runner and has a good arm as well. Trey Lance has an absolute rocket, and he is a fantastic runner. He had over 1,000 yards rushing at North Dakota State and just was generally the best athlete on the field.
Well, highlighting some of the key players here in Dalton Miller's 2-round mock draft at ProFootballNetwork.com. The New York Giants are on the clock, and they select a playmaking tight end in Kyle Pitts. You have Daniel Jones, who's improved. You have Saquon Barkley coming back. You have some decent receivers around you, too, at the New York Giants, but tight end has definitely been a position of question for them. And look, they're getting a good guy here out of Kyle Pitts. Obviously, I don't think you have to explain too much. This is a great fit, I think, for the New York Giants.
Yeah, he's terrifying. He's your Darren Waller type. He can actually catch the football, which will be a very nice sight for New York Giants fans watching their tight end. And as a Dallas Cowboys, fan and somebody who covers the team, that was the pick that most terrified me for the Giants. And so it felt right to go with Pitts. And, a lot of people see Kyle Pitts as a top 3 to 5 prospect overall in this draft class. And so whenever you can get that at pick 11, you're winning.
Well, now the Dallas Cowboys, they're on the clock next at number 12, and you have them taking a cornerback. Obviously, this is another trade with the San Francisco 49ers. Ifeatu Melifonwu out of Syracuse. And Dalton, I don't think I've seen anybody else on Twitter pound the table more for Melifonwu coming out of Syracuse than you. You've been his biggest fan. We obviously talked about it in our Senior Bowl preview here at ProFootballNetwork.com. Now the Dallas Cowboys, they need cornerback help, and they get a pretty damn good player here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just a fantastic scheme fit for the Dallas Cowboys. He is your quintessential cover 3 corner. He is more fluid than you would expect somebody of his size to be, and he has the long speed to carry that deep third in the Dan Quinn system. And I know that this is way higher than anybody else has seen him, but you look at 6'3", 215 pounds. He's going to run in the 4.4s. He's going to jump out of the gym. His tape was fantastic against Clemson and UNC, and he had a good Senior Bowl as well. And with being at the Senior Bowl, that gives him an advantage because he was able to meet and talk with teams as well.
Yeah, his stock definitely improved, and I was very impressed with his footage over there. Obviously, at the Senior Bowl, I think he's got great hips, great footwork, the ability to click and close as well, not open up the shoulders too quickly, and he also understands his value of cushion, especially when he's playing off cover. So he's one of those guys that would not surprise me if he went in round number 1. But now let's get to the Miami Dolphins. Another trade, Dalton. Dalton, I swear, this is the best part of this mock draft is you have some awesome trades here. This is obviously for the Chargers to be able to move up to 3. They're going to swap here with Miami at 13. They're going to go with an offensive tackle. And when we talk about Tua, we talk about the fact that obviously I think you need some help at receiver. They could address that in free agency. Obviously, you're going to get some guys like Preston Williams back, Devontae Parker back. Get those guys healthy altogether for 2021. But they need some offensive line help altogether because we saw some teams that were able to generate pressure on Tua, and it made his life a lot more difficult. Now you have Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech coming into the mix. What type of pick is this going to be for the Dolphins? How is it going to make them better in the AFC East?
Yeah, so you have Jackson and Hunt right now as the offensive tackles in Miami, and I think a lot of people looked at Hunt as, an offensive guard in the NFL, and he kind of just ended up staying at right tackle for the Miami Dolphins. I think that getting a guy like Christian Darrisaw, first of all, Darrisaw I actually like more than Slater, but I know that the NFL likes Slater more than Darrisaw. I think Darrisaw, if you move him over to that right side, or if you move Austin Jackson over to the right side, whatever you do, or if you have Darrisaw, just fight it out with Hunt for that right tackle spot. Darrisaw is a guy who, NFL teams are looking at with that position flex as well, being able to play tackle and guard. So you can literally just put the best 5 out there for the Miami Dolphins. And like I said, with the 3rd pick in the draft, with Penei Sewell going to LA, the best thing you can do for your young quarterback is to protect him, make him feel comfortable, and getting another offensive lineman it's going to do wonders for Tua.
And the Minnesota Vikings are on the clock next at pick number 14 in the 2021 NFL Draft, courtesy of Dalton Miller, NFL Draft Analyst here at Pro Football Network. You have them taking an edge rusher. Obviously for them, defense has been one of their identities. The play-action offense with Kirk Cousins, a strong running game there with Dalvin Cook. Why is Pay one of the most important prospects here for Minnesota with all the prospects that are available on the table?
Yeah, well, I mean, I looked at their defensive line last year going into the season, and I recognized about 2 names overall, just on the entire defensive line. And I didn't know any of the – well, I knew one defensive tackle, Hercules Mataafa, and that's only because of the name and because I covered him in the draft. That's it. That's all I knew. You need defensive guys. Mike Zimmer cannot go with an empty cupboard on defense any longer. It was proven this past season. They need corners. They need defense. They need everything defensively all of the sudden on that. So they went with the athletic freak and the guy who they think can rush the passer on day one.
When Rick Spielman loses one of his right-hand men and George Payton to the Denver Broncos, Payton became the new GM there, obviously the assistant GM. They did a lot of scouting together, and obviously when the COVID pandemic hit initially, those two spent time in a hotel with the drawing board, putting together the big board all together for Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see how Spielman and company kind of adjust to the loss of obviously someone that's been in their scouting personnel department for many, many years now. But transition to the New England Patriots, they are here on the clock at pick number 15, and you have them selecting some offensive tackle help with Elijah Vera Tucker out of Southern California.
Yeah, they wanted Pitts and they wanted Lance, and they didn't get either of those two. So they ended up going with the offensive tackle. You just build in the trenches. I don't know what they're going to do at the quarterback position, but I can almost guarantee it's not going to be great. The best way to help not just young quarterbacks, but quarterbacks that aren't very good, you need offensive line help, and they need that. And, Vera Tucker, another guy, it seems like all of these offensive tackles in this draft class have gotten the tackle to guard move at some point by somebody, and he's a guy who can do that. I know Onwenu was really, really good as a rookie at the offensive tackle spot. You have left tackle, the name is escaping me right now, but he's been hurt in and out of the lineup, and getting a guy like Vera Tucker that can play inside out, and you can put the best 5 out there, that it's the best thing for the New England Patriots here at 15.
Well, then the Arizona Cardinals, they come up at 16 on the clock here, and I like this. I like this selection you have here, Dalton. I'm a defensive back guy. They already have Patrick Peterson, but they're going to have the secondary of P squared here. You're going to have 2 Patricks, Patrick Peterson and Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, and obviously my good friend Greg Williams, the cornerback coach for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, he's getting a phenomenal playmaker here. Obviously, I think looking opposite of Patrick Peterson, who really wasn't, I mean, in a sense, he hasn't been the pappy of himself. He still has the ability to do so. However, what a perfect way to maybe potentially replace him or even add value opposite of him than a guy that has the traits to do exactly what he did.
Exactly. Patrick Peterson is getting up there in age now. You need the heir apparent to him. And to have Patrick Surtain fall to 16 here, I really kind of think that this is his floor overall. He's a phenomenal player. He's just so clean technically. And I went back. I finally got the Ohio State game. I finally got the national championship game. I wanted to see that long speed. I wanted to see how he carried guys vertically. And he did a fine job at it. And that was really my only question mark for him. And so getting him at 16, especially in the NFC West that has some dogs at receiver, it's going to be really fun to see how he looks as a rookie.
Yeah, you're going to have to find a way to counteract the DK Metcalfs of the world and just the speed, obviously, that, a lot of those teams in that division have, especially with DeAndre Hopkins now in Arizona. But now we transition to pick number 17, and we're getting into dire straits here. The Las Vegas Raiders, they're going to go with some defensive tackle help here because their defense really did struggle. Max Crosby, somebody that stood out, but on the defensive interior, they didn't really have a lot of push up the middle. I like this pick if I'm a Raiders fan because Christian Barmore is one of those guys that stands out as one of those physical presence that can command the attention of a guard center and allow other guys to come free. Kind of explain your thought process behind this pick here.
Yeah, I mean, Gruden has a type. And Gruden is, as Mike Mayock might...
stingy point, he has the type, yes.
Yes, and Mike Mayock might be the GM, but John runs things here, and they love their big school guys. They've gone with them recently, and I think that they stick with that with Christian Barmore here. He's somebody who really started to shine towards the end of his, short career at Alabama. He was a part-time guy before this year. He was still a part-time heavy rotation guy this year, but he was super productive. He's, 315 pounds, but he has 1 tech and 3 tech traits. I just think that he's a nice, solid pick for the team right now.
The Miami Dolphins, they are up next on the clock, and you have them getting some wide receiver help here with Kadarius Toney, wide receiver out of Florida. And look, we talk about Alabama being wide receiver U. Florida consistently year in and year out also produces some very exciting talent.
Yeah, and staying in Florida, Kadarius Toney, he is he's the type of wide receiver that Miami needs. Somebody who can create separation, somebody who can take passes, behind the line of scrimmage, just get to these easy completions and watch what this kid can do once he has the ball in his hands. There's a play that I talk about in the Missouri game where he bounced around, pinballed off of multiple NFL defenders in Nick Bolton and Tyree Gillespie on his way to, scampering to a touchdown. He's just electric with the ball in his hands, and they got a playmaker.
Well, now we go to Washington football team. They're on the clock, and obviously for Pro Football Network, in our awards that we nominated, Chase Young became the Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Washington football team, and now they're going to be picking another player that has some very exciting athleticism, some talent, ability to be able to cover as an inside backer here. There's some character, some question concerns, obviously, that I think are going to be answered in the NFL draft process, but why do you think that Micah Parsons is a great fit for Ron Rivera and the Washington football team?
Freak athlete, height, weight, speed guy. The only sore spot on that defense really is the linebacker spot. Getting a guy, that can work off of, having a fantastic defensive line, having guys on the interior that can defend the run and keep him clean and just allow Micah Parsons to read, react, and flow to the football. Because if there was one thing that you saw from his film that he really struggled with, it was the processing part of the game. And I think having guys that are going to be able to keep him clean and just allow him to flow and make plays with his athleticism, allow him to come downhill and shoot gaps, on top of the best trait that he has is being a pass rusher. You're adding another pass rusher to this defense, and that is terrifying to the rest of the NFC East.
It really is, and defensively, how they played. I mean, even for them going against Tampa Bay, they gave up a couple of big plays, but for the most part, they really condensed the opportunities that Tom Brady and them had, obviously in their first playoff appearance in quite some time there. There's going to be some excitement there. I think with Chase Young becoming a captain of that defense, being able to carry that torch as a young guy, it's a lot of responsibility, but then you add another young guy in Micah Parsons. I think it could be one of those high-risk, high-reward type benefits here for the Washington football team. But now let's transition to the 20th pick here. The Chicago Bears on the clock. We all know they're in need of a quarterback. They're not sold on Nick Foles. They're not sold on Mitch Trubisky. You have them taking Mac Jones out of Alabama. And to be honest with you, a lot of people, in my opinion, look, they're kind of sleeping on Mac Jones a little bit. He may not have the athletic traits that we see a lot of these quarterbacks in this year's draft class have. However, he does have the ability to fit those balls into tight windows and to be one of those pocket passing quarterbacks. Do you believe it's a great fit here for Mac Jones and Chicago?
Well, I don't know if it's a great fit. I think it's more out of desperation, honestly. You cannot go into 2021 with Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky. You just can't. Those guys are not the guys. I don't know if Mac Jones is the guy going into the future that is going to be, your franchise quarterback, but you have to do something here. And Mac Jones, like you said, he is very accurate. He is very intelligent as a passer. The recent NFL trend has been to get the guys with the arms, with the athleticism that can make plays out of structure. And that was the big question mark with Mac Jones coming into this year. Can he make plays out of structure? Can he be a playmaker? And we saw that a little bit more this year. Can he do it going forward? That's the question. Can he get out and beat NFL defensive tackles and find throwing windows? And that'll be the question. And, how he reacts, on structure, he'll be fine. How he goes outside of that, that's the question.
And we're going to highlight a couple of picks here quickly as we continue to move on through Dalton Miller's 2-round mock draft here, ProFootballNetwork.com. The Indianapolis Colts have some questions at quarterback. They could address that in free agency or through trade. But for the NFL draft, they select Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher out of Georgia here. And obviously, they're looking to try to find a way to get to the quarterback consistently enough. They were not able to do so as much in the 2020 NFL regular season. Obviously, when you have DeForest Buckner on the inside, that helps. But if you can compensate with that, or if you can help out with the whole addition of having some interior pressure and then being able to create consistent outside pressure, I think it'll benefit the Colts as well. But let's get to the Tennessee Titans pick here, 22nd overall. Obviously, explain your pick here that you had here, Dalton. Obviously, edge rusher out of Miami. These are the players, man. I think a lot of people don't talk about enough leading up into the draft process, specifically in this year's edge rusher class.
Yeah, man, the Titans need pass rush. They were absolutely horrible in 2020 trying to rush the passer. Gregory Rousseau, he had 15 and a half sacks as a position convert from safety. This is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing right now. And I think it's going to take time for him most likely to really get it at the NFL level. But he has outside the in versatility. He's a big dude, but his best pass rushing was from the interior, beating offensive guards with his length and with his explosiveness. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Titans use him, but they're going with the upside.
Well, now we transition to the New York Jets pick at 23rd. Obviously, Robert Saleh coming over and becoming the head coach, a guy who they hope can really rebuild the culture that Adam Gase has destroyed in his tenure. We've seen that happen quite often here. But now you have them selecting J.C. Horn out of South Carolina, one of the most underrated and potentially high-reward cornerbacks in this year's draft class.
I can't talk without J.C. Horn without just telling it like it is. He's an a-hole. He's going to get up in your face. He's going to literally punch you in the mouth sometimes. He'll punch you in the mouth after the whistle sometimes. And listen, this is a guy who is going to get flagged early in his career. He is a grabby guy. That needs to get fixed technically, but I think that going to Robert Saleh in that defensive style, Saleh bringing some very good assistance over with him. And so I think that this is a really, really good fit for J.C. Horn and for the New York Jets.
So now we're transitioning to pick number 24 here. The Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock, going with some offensive tackle help. Obviously, Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, and Ben Roethlisberger more than likely coming back for another season. Not as mobile, and we're starting to see teams design a game plan. If they can get pressure on Roethlisberger and force him to kind of throw errant throws, it plays into their favor here. Is this a good selection for them overall, considering the tackles that are potentially still available?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite fits in the entire draft. Tevin Jenkins, he's kind of that AFC North guy. He's got that kind of attitude. The Steel City is going to love him. He's really physical. And the best thing about him is he's really, really good with the quick sets. Ben Roethlisberger does not hold on to the football for very long. So there's quick sets, the 45 sets, that's where he is really, really good. The vertical sets, the longer developing pass plays, Jenkins is going to have to get better and progress there. But with what Pittsburgh likes to do, he's perfect for them.
Well, and obviously, we're going to skip a pick here. We're going to go to pick number 27. The Baltimore Ravens are on the clock, and you chose Joseph Asai out of Texas. For the Baltimore Ravens, defensively under Wink Martindale, they did a phenomenal job. They got Marlon Humphrey. Why is this a pick do you feel like would help elevate them, especially with guys when you take a look at Yannick Ngakoue, Derek Wolfe, and even Calais Campbell?
Yeah, when you look at the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's an attitude to that rivalry. There's an attitude just to the AFC North in general. Joseph Asai, I don't know if anybody has a motor like him in the entire draft class. And that's part of what makes him so good. He's not the greatest athlete in the world. He's not the best pass rusher in the world. He just plays harder than literally everybody else on the football field, and that's why he is so productive. If you need a guy who is going to come off the edge and make plays backside off of wide zone, he is going to be the guy to do that because he's going to go as hard as possible on every single rep. And I said that he's not the best pass rusher in this class, but he does fight with his hands very well. He does have a little bit of a pass rush repertoire. He's one of my favorite fits in this class.
Well, our next selection here, pick number 28, the New Orleans Saints. They take Baron Browning, linebacker out of Ohio State, and a guy who really impressed during the Senior Bowl, Dalton. He's one of the guys we talked about. Obviously, for them, they lost Quan Alexander to an Achilles injury. I'd be very surprised if he was actually back in 2021 for New Orleans, considering all their cap stuff that they have to maneuver, negotiate around. I think this is a great pick for New Orleans.
Yeah, and I think being beside a veteran like Demario Davis is going to be really big because Baron Browning was a highly sought after recruit. He's a really good athlete, still kind of learning his way around the game, even a couple years, 4 years into his career at Ohio State. So I think having that veteran presence is really going to help him moving forward.
Well, now the Green Bay Packers. Now, last year, they drew a lot of criticism, I think, from a lot of people here, Dalton, because of the fact that they went and they selected Jordan Love when they could have added some weapons at wide receiver. And now they have finally done that. They've given Aaron Rodgers another receiving threat here at pick number 29. And it's Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota. What kind of fit does he have opposite of Devontae Adams?
Get this man some help. Get Aaron Rodgers somebody opposite of Devontae Adams. Rashad Bateman is, kind of is reminiscent of Devontae Adams in, 6'1", 200 pounds, right around there, but a really, really good route runner, for his size. He's not the most explosive wide receiver in the world, but he's really nuanced in the way that he creates separation. He's really good in contested catch situations as well. He's kind of the complete package and the type of receiver that I think is going to fit really well with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, and obviously going into pick number 30, the Buffalo Bills are on the clock, and you have them taking an offensive tackle. Samuel Cosme out of Texas, obviously one of the tackles I think that probably could go a little bit higher than he is projected here. But I think for Buffalo, for Josh Allen, one thing we did see, they probably need a little bit more consistency at the tackle position, even though their offensive line was much more improved in 2020.
Yeah, you have that weird situation with what's going on at right tackle with Cody Ford, going from guard to tackle, and them kind of being a rotation there. Getting Cosme, to come in and play tackle, whether it be the left side or the right side, is unimportant to me. He's a guy who's super athletic, and I think that he fits, getting a guy like Josh Allen out of the pocket and allowing Cosme to work in space and use his athleticism, I think is going to be a really good fit for Buffalo.
Well, and then obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who playing in Super Bowl 55. They have Ronald Jones, they have Leonard Fournette, but you have them taking Najee Harris, who, look, in my opinion, I think could elevate to the next level. I mean, he could take Tampa Bay up there even further. I do believe he's already a better option than Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette here.
Yeah, I mean, he's my favorite running back in the draft class. I couldn't let him fall any further. I mean, in my opinion, I'm not a running back in the first round type of dude. When you get towards the end of it, if you can take a luxury pick, if you don't have pressing needs, and I really don't think the Buccaneers do, go with the guy who is going to help your really old quarterback. I mean, at this point, and it's not like, he's 6'1", 6'2", he's 200, a legitimate 230 pounds, but he's an outstanding receiver out of the backfield, and that's something that they really like to utilize in Tampa.
Well, and then the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously, they are the 32nd pick projected right here in this mock draft. You have them selecting an offensive tackle. When we look at the injuries, Eric Fisher tore his Achilles. Mitchell Schwartz dealt with an injury as well. They need some help, especially as some of those guys get older and could find themselves on the way out in Kansas City.
Yeah, you need offensive line help in Kansas City. I don't really know where else you go here. And getting a guy like Alex Leatherwood, who has a ton of production at Alabama in 4 years. He's played on the inside, the outside, right side offensive tackle, left side offensive tackle. And so you can kind of put him anywhere to start right away for you if you're the Chiefs next year.
Well, one of the things we're going to do now, obviously the second round is very in-depth, folks, but we're going to highlight a couple of the key picks that Dalton had selected in the second round of his mock draft. And first things first, we're going to start things off here with Jalen Phillips. Pick number 36, the Miami Dolphins on the clock. You have them taking him. Why is this an important fit? Obviously, with Brian Flores' defensive coordinator experience and his ability to send pressure after quarterbacks with the amoeba defense, why is Jalen Phillips a great fit here for Miami?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of one of my pet cats in this. I think he's the best pass rusher in this draft class, but he has injury history. He's had 3 concussions. He had a wrist injury, an ankle injury, and almost retired from the game at UCLA before going to Miami. He had a great year at Miami. He was a 5-star recruit. He's super athletic. He's super long, and he can play a little bit in space and in coverage as well. And so he can be multiple. He's a guy who can do a little bit of everything, and I think that just allows Brian Flores and that defense to be more multiple.
Oh, and I think that's very important, especially in a division that has Josh Allen now running things here. But now we're going to jump to pick 44. The Dallas Cowboys are on the clock, and they're going to take they're going to take Richie Grant. Obviously, he's a safety out of Central Florida. One of the guys that stood out to me at the Senior Bowl here. And the thing about Grant that stands out, his ability, he could play free, he could play strong, he could play in the nickel, and he could play outside cornerback. I mean, he is really a jack of all trades. He's one of those high reward type players. And so now the Dallas Cowboys essentially go with two defenders all together here.
Yeah, I needed to make up for my first pick because I know the Cowboys fans really didn't like Melifonwu going that high, but Richie Grant, he's your quintessential, he's your free safety. He's exactly what you want in Dan Quinn's cover 3. He can roam the middle of the field. He can work as a cover 1 guy getting to the sideline. He is just exactly what you want from that position, and he can come down covering the slot, receivers, tight ends. He can, like you said, do it all. He's the perfect fit for the Cowboys.
Well, now we're jumping to pick number 48, the Las Vegas Raiders. Sticking with the defensive trend here, you have them taking Asante Samuel Jr. Kind of explain the process behind this, because in the secondary, I felt like last year they were much more improved altogether for the Raiders.
Gruden grinder, baby. I honestly, I couldn't let Asante Samuel Jr. fall anymore.
Yeah.
And so they go with him. He can play inside. He can play outside. I know that he's a smaller corner, but it really doesn't matter. He's super physical. The length is somewhat of an issue, but in the NFL today, you don't see a ton of massively built wide receivers at this point. You have to be able to cover in 1v1 situations in man. And I think Asante Samuel is one of, if not the best pure man-on-man cover corners in this draft. And so getting him with pick 48 is fantastic value.
Oh, we saw the Raiders get into several shootouts with the Chiefs last year, and maybe if they have some more cornerback help, more solid cornerback play, maybe they do come away with a sweep of the Chiefs in the regular season there. But obviously jumping to pick number 49 here, the Arizona Cardinals, they need some offensive help, and you have them selecting Creed Humphrey, obviously out of Oklahoma. Kind of explain the pick here for Kyler Murray. Is that just more so kind of a line to reunite him with a former teammate?
Honestly, I didn't even think about it when I did it. He's the best center in the draft class. And listen, I think it's been like 6 years that I've been trying to get a center in Arizona. And they just haven't done anything with the position. And I think, getting a guy like Creed Humphrey, who is just so solid on the interior, is really going to open up that offense, because if there's one thing Kyler Murray has to be able to do, it's throw over the middle of the field with, better anticipation, finding those throwing windows. And part of that is just having a pocket to do it in.
Well, that's super important, especially in that division where you have Aaron Donald, you're going against him, and more than likely you're going to see a lot of attention here. But sticking kind of with that NFC West division here, at pick number 57, the Los Angeles Rams, they lose their defense coordinator, Brendan Staley, after 1 year. He takes the money, he runs to L.A. He doesn't go too far. He just runs up the block to the Los Angeles Chargers here. But you have them selecting Dylan Moses now at the linebacker position. How much change do you really envision for L.A., considering that Staley leaves and goes to L.A. up the road? Do they change their defensive scheme much? And if so, how does Dylan Moses fit into the picture?
I really don't know what they're going to do with their defense. And so I just think getting dudes who are athletic is never a bad situation on the defensive side of the ball. Dylan Moses is somebody who, coming into the season, was viewed as a top 10 potential pick overall because of his freak athleticism. He had he didn't have a great year at Alabama. He was playing a different position. He was playing the Mike. He was playing the middle linebacker for them. He has to play will at the NFL level. Let him use his athleticism to read, react, flow to the football. And listen, he has to get better technically in coverage, but he has the athleticism to do it. If he can get those things down, you're looking at somebody who can legitimately be a top 5 linebacker in the entire league if he gets it together.
Well, it's going to be obviously fun to watch here, but now let's jump ahead to pick number 60, the New Orleans Saints. Life after Drew Brees. Who's going to be the quarterback? It's going to be Taysom Hill. It's going to be Jameis Winston. It's going to be the mailman down the street. Regardless, they need a weapon there, obviously, with Emmanuel Sanders. Michael Thomas, dealing with some injury concerns last year, but you have them taking Tylan Wallace, who's arguably one of the best wide receiving prospects in this year's NFL draft, here at pick 60.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Manny Sanders came in and did, more than enough for them opposite of Michael Thomas, but you need that long-term option to be opposite of Michael Thomas. And listen, there was a lot of controversy surrounding Michael Thomas as well, so you never know what's going to happen with him in the future. Getting a guy like Tyler Wallace, I think, is perfect, especially if Jameis Winston is your quarterback, somebody who really likes to be a gunslinger, because Tyler Wallace, even though he is a little bit shorter, 5'11", even though he does have shorter arms, he has one of the bigger catch radiuses in this draft class. He makes catches that nobody else in this draft class makes outside of his frame, and he can run and he can get open. The questions really for him were the knee injuries. He tore his ACL last year and then had a little knee trouble towards the end of the year. This year, I think that's the only reason he's around at pick 60 for the Saints.
Oh, and obviously medicals are always going to be an important part of NFL teams' evaluations of players. And sometimes those injuries can take those really good players and they could bump them down a little bit to where a team will be getting a steal, right? I mean, injury concerns unfortunately happen at the collegiate level, they happen at the high school, the professional level. But obviously the build up, the evaluation process could get a damn good team that needs a player at that position. They could get them a damn good player altogether. But Dalton, thank you so much for your time here, your analysis on your 2-round mock draft. That fans, if you guys want to read it more exclusively, please go to ProFootballNetwork.com. And also, don't forget, you have to subscribe to the Pro Football Network YouTube channel. We're going to be doing some awesome giveaways, especially once we get to 1,000 total subscribers altogether. But you guys can follow Dalton Miller as well, at Dalton B. Miller on Twitter. I'm Cody Rourke, Senior NFL Analyst at ProFootballNetwork.com. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.